DxO is celebrating 20 years in business, and you may know them for their software like PhotoLabs, or maybe for their camera, the DxO One.
I know DxO Mark that I used for so long to analyze cameras and lenses and figure out what was the most perfect thing.
But what you might not know about them is that their company started by saving lives, and their technology has saved hundreds of lives to date. So we want to get into our trip to DxO. We actually went all the way to Paris to meet them, which I'm so glad that we did, because we got to see a company with real soul behind it. We got to see software made by photo enthusiasts for photo enthusiasts, and really see the people making these amazing products come to life.
Yeah, we got to meet with their world-class scientists and mathematicians. We looked through patents. I think their history is pretty fascinating. But let's start with saving lives and overcoming physics.
Yeah, and we got to meet the CEO and founder, Jérôme Ménière, which I think is very important. And he's a humble guy. He didn't really want us to talk about him, but I'm gonna go rogue and do it anyway. So let's start with Jérôme, who has his master's in engineering from the Central School in Paris. He studied business at Stanford University. He's super smart, he pays attention to detail, and he's extremely driven. And I'm not just saying that to blow smoke, I'm saying that because those are traits you see throughout DxO. When they do things, they're done well. In 1993, Jérôme met with an inventor who was trying to invent a system to save people from drowning, because he found out that one person per week was drowning in French public pools.
Yeah, the problem is a human lifeguard just cannot concentrate for long enough, because humans aren't good at waiting for days, weeks, months for that one split second when somebody slips underwater and loses control. But computers are super good at just doing nothing and waiting and paying attention. So Jérôme started looking into this, and he talked to a Fields Medal winning mathematician who said, that's impossible. But here's something you have to know about Jérôme. He loves to hear that. He loves to hear that something can't be done, because that means everybody else is going to be afraid to do it.
Yes, when you take big risks, there are big rewards. So if you work hard to make the quote-unquote impossible happen, you know that your competition won't be able to catch up right away. So this person with an engineer mind, of course, says, okay, technology can help save lives, and he starts working on technology to go in pools to save people from drowning.
And in 1995, he founds a company called Vision IQ. We're not to the DxO era yet.
No,
but
we're not
Vision
there yet.
IQ builds a system called Poseidon, which uses multiple underwater cameras with like super wide-angle lenses. It needs to be corrected, because super wide-angle lenses have distortion, and being underwater has distortion, but the system also has to look for human shapes, something that people weren't doing at the time. I could tell you more about Poseidon, but I'm going to let Peter Jennings from ABC News tell you a little bit about it.
At this public pool in Toronto, bathers cavort under the watchful eye of a rather brainy camera. In fact, 10 cameras, all of them linked to a computer known as the Poseidon system, which actually analyzes and interprets what it sees from the multiple points of view to present a complete three-dimensional scene of swimmers in trouble. A demonstration dummy falling to the bottom is detected immediately by the computer's eyes. When the dummy remains motionless on the bottom for 10 seconds, Poseidon triggers an alert, and pagers immediately pinpoint the trouble spot for lifeguards.
Every half second counts, in my opinion. This technology is going to get us there to that person faster.
The shifting surface glare that can obscure a lifeguard's vision is no problem for Poseidon, which can discern real bodies underwater from mere shadows.
When somebody first describes a system to me, I said, you can't do it. It is way too complicated.
It's already paying dividends. That's a swimmer alone and drowning at the bottom of a pool in France. Poseidon saved him by alerting lifeguards.
In 1999, the first life was saved by Poseidon. That's a huge success. If you can imagine the relief of working on something for so long and then finally seeing the results of even just saving one life at the time, it must have just felt so incredible. Today, Maytronics owns the Poseidon system. It's used in 300 pools, and it's credited with saving more than 50 lives.
Okay, let's move into the modern era. So they're always thinking about how can we use this technology we have in other complementary ways. So 2001, Vision IQ launches what they call digital optics, or DO. And they found DxO Labs. Turns out somebody else was using the name DO, so they decided to mix it up by putting that X in the middle. And that's how they became DxO Labs.
Ta-da! DxO Labs. They used all of the technology that was in Poseidon and all that research that they had done to make other products, because they said, hey, we have these lenses, we have this software, let's see what else we can do with it.
So we're in the early 2000s, and people are mostly taking pictures with things like disposable cameras. But some of us have computers and we're using webcams. Both those things produced awful results. Remember what old webcams used to look like? So the DxO team thinks, we know how to correct these underwater images. I bet we can do a lot of good to the images coming out of the terrible lenses on webcams. And sure enough, they could. They figured out how to process this in software and produce much better images. They also took one of those Kodak disposable film cameras and put it through their whole analyzing system to figure out everything that was wrong with those crappy disposable lenses and produce a better image. They did a blind test where they showed it to a Nikon employee and said, which of these images looks better? The one from the disposable film camera that's been processed with our software, or the one taken with high-end Nikon? You know which one he picked?
The DxO disposable camera picture.
Yeah,
I
the
do
film
know.
camera. They hope to sell the software to Kodak so that when they scanned in the film from people's disposable cameras, it could be corrected. But Kodak was already kind of on the way out.
But instead, they found other companies to work with, including Texas Instruments, which you've probably heard of if you used a calculator, and Nokia, if you're a person over 30 who's had a cell phone.
Yeah, so disposable film cameras are on the way out. But these phone cameras, not smartphone cameras, but phone cameras, were on the up and up. There were a lot of constraints on the design because if you remember, phones used to be really small. The tiny lenses didn't have room for things like apertures or focusing motors, so they were fixed focus. They always had to focus on one place, which meant you couldn't focus up close, you couldn't focus far away. And that means most of the time stuff was out of focus.
Yes, but this is where Jérôme's engineering mind comes in again. Just like with Poseidon, where there was a challenge that could not be overcome, these phones presented a challenge that required some out-of-the-box thinking. And Jérôme realized that we don't have to use traditional optics. We could change optics a bit to fix these problems.
Yeah, gone are the days when lenses had to be designed to produce a perfect image for a film plane. Now, lenses could be designed around compact size, and fixing things like chromatic aberration and curved lines could be done in post, either on the chip or in software, with software created by DxO. And if I can get nerdy and technical for just a bit, for my nerds out there, I just want to talk about just one of their many patents, because this one is so cool. This is called eDoF, like enhanced or extended depth of field, and it allowed lenses that didn't have focusing motor, fixed focus lenses, to focus near, middle, or far away. The way they did this is they exploited how the spectrum, the rainbow, passes through the glass or plastic in a lens. The thing is, red, green, and blue, they don't take the same path through a lens by default. Lens designers usually struggle to make the entire spectrum land on the same place on the sensor or film plane, but that makes the lens really big and heavy. What DxO did was they took advantage of this. I don't remember which way it works, but let's say the green focused up close and the red focused far away. In their little image signal processing path, they would figure out if the subject was close and then use that part of the spectrum for the detail, using the other parts of the spectrum to fill in the color information. And in that way they could have sharp, in-focus images near, middle, or far away without the lens moving at all. Mind-blowing, right?
Okay, I just want to put this into practical terms. Before this technology, your phone would only be able to take a picture at like 6 feet away. This would allow you to take close pictures of like a business card or something closer. So it was practical technology with a very complicated explanation.
So they sold that technology and their image signal processing on chip to TI and Nokia for years. But all good things come to an end. Apple took a big part of the phone market, and Apple likes to do everything in-house, so they weren't going to buy DxO technology. The other major phone manufacturer became Android. Just everything was Android or iPhone based, and Android used Qualcomm chips, which have their own image signal processor, and thus DxO was a little bit left out of the loop.
They got cut out a little bit.
But that technology is still alive because they sold off a lot of that team to GoPro, which has big French offices. And those team members still today are making your GoPro images more and more perfect. And if you think about it, it's very similar. GoPro has fixed focus super wide angle lenses just like the old phones did.
But once again, DxO never lets their information go to waste because in the process of developing that technology, they were learning how to test things and they were understanding optics quality and image quality, and they decided to use all of that information to help reviewers review their cameras.
Yeah, before 2003, lens reviews were very subjective. Like, reviewers would just be like, yeah, this lens seems pretty sharp. You know, we had MTF charts, you know, those liney things. Even those were very inconsistent, and two different MTF charts might not have been made with the same standard. So there was really no good way to compare two lenses.
Yeah, there wasn't any standardization, and DxO had that expertise. So they developed a tool and a system for reviewers to be able to review cameras and lenses. And these wouldn't just be like any reviewer on YouTube now, but these were journalists with photo magazines and editors and things like that. So in 2003, they had this standardized process, a way to compare lenses, and it was like $18,000 at the time to buy into this system.
Yeah, DxO Analyzer, but it had a lot of sort of checks and balances in it to make sure that the lighting was consistent, regardless of the time and place, eliminating those variables. And so a reviewer could test a lens at a different time and place, and the results would be about 0.02%, which meant there was almost no variation, something that reviewers still struggle with today.
It was expensive, and they had reduced prices for journalists, but
mostly they sold it to like the camera and lens manufacturers to use in their own testing and development.
Yes, but aside from the cost, it wasn't that easy to use. It was still a highly technical system, and some people were struggling with it. So DxO decided to just bring it all in-house and get a bunch of different cameras and lenses and do their own testing. And that's where they came out with DxO Mark. They used all of the information from testing cameras and lenses and published it in 2008. And that's what we use to review a lot of gear.
DxO Mark still today is the most valuable resource for anybody who wants to objectively compare how a camera and lens performs against all of its competitors, because there's nothing subjective about it. There's no fanboyism to it. There's no emotions or feelings. It's just accurate measurements. And as you can imagine, that can be actually infuriating to fanboys, as we discovered, because in our YouTube career, we're both scientific people, so we liked these objective measurements, but people would get mad at us for using it. They accused us of being sponsored by DxO Mark. In 2014, I actually made a video analyzing the DxO Mark website to see if it was useful. I took our own suite of cameras and lenses that we had here and reproduced the test and just tried to validate if the data was valuable or if maybe they were being paid off by the camera and lens manufacturers to make one lens look better than the other. And guess what I found?
It was good.
The data was perfect. Everything I checked was completely consistent with their results, because these are people of integrity. These are perfectionists. These are passionate people building this.
Well, there's that engineer mind coming in again. They're highly technical, they're highly skilled, and they're photographers who are passionate about results. And it was so cool, after doing our camera reviews for years and using DxO Mark, it was very cool to go into their lab and get to actually see where they're testing stuff and just see how meticulous they are and how consistent their methods are.
DxO Mark was so successful that it really needed dedicated management. So they decided to spin off the website and all of that data separately in 2017. So that branched off from what we know as DxO Labs today, but it continues to be its own successful independent company.
Aside from just analyzing cameras and lenses, they were also making the lenses for various phones, and so they were starting to deal in production, and of course they knew the science behind creating optics. They just had a foot in every part of photography, so they made their own camera. It's called the DxO One, and we have a copy here. And this little camera connects to your phone, and it gives your phone better optics by using all of their technology to create the best photo possible.
This is something we still need today, which is a camera that bridges the gap between smartphones and separate cameras. Still today, I struggle moving pictures and video from my traditional camera over to my phone. This solved all that by connecting directly to a phone, an iPhone, through the Lightning cable. But it gives you the capabilities of a proper 32 millimeter equivalent f1.8 to f11 variable aperture lens with real focusing motors and at true brilliant perfectionist level optical quality, but right in your phone.
I actually tested this side by side with my phone lens. This is an iPhone 14 Pro. This came up with better results. And the main difference I saw was that this has real bokeh. So it had this beautiful, smooth background. The iPhone was not able to replicate that.
You can connect it to your phone, or you can detach it and use Wi-Fi, so you could remotely control it. You could stream to Facebook Live. I want it in 2024, and this came out in 2015.
We have it, but you can't, because these are no longer for sale.
Oh, that's such a bummer. They did sell 35,000 copies over 3 years, but they had a real production problem because the lens design was so different, so novel. In order to fit it into something the size of a car key, their lens manufacturer had a really low yield rate because the optics required such precision, and that meant that they were wasting a lot of money on copies of the lenses that were just being thrown out because they didn't meet their requirements for optical perfection. And so when they went to make the sequel to it, which they did start to design, the investors kind of backed out. It was too complicated, too perfect for this world. I could tell they really loved it, and I do too. But this is the story of a business. There are ups and there are downs. But now we get to talk about the thing that most of you know DxO for, which is their amazing software for photographers, tools for photographers.
Yeah, and I will say, I've been familiar with DxO software for a long time, but getting to actually go to their offices and meet the people gave me a whole new perspective, because this isn't just some huge software company with no soul. These are real people and photographers who love photography. They're not just highly technical. They have photo competitions where everyone submits a picture of a different theme. They have Creative Day where they present to the company. They come up with their own idea, some project that they just, passion project they would like to work on, and they present it. And
in fact, in the last Creative Day, somebody said, maybe it's our 20th anniversary. Maybe we should get somebody to tell our anniversary story, our history.
Yes.
And that's how we ended up here today. Thanks, Creative Day.
Yeah. So the employees actually have an opportunity to steer some part of the company. And it felt like a family, and it felt exciting, and it felt passionate. And it gave me this different perspective on DxO.
So going back to 2004, you remember DxO Analyzer, this complex tool that they made for people reviewing lenses. They had all this expertise of analyzing lenses and even correcting things. So they made DxO Optics Pro for consumers, really their first consumer product in 2004. They continually improved it, and later in 2017, this becomes DxO PhotoLab, which you might be familiar with. I use it today. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit.
They also came out in 2006 with DxO FilmPack, which is one of my favorites. So in 2006, people were transitioning from film cameras to digital, but a lot of photographer style was based on their favorite film and the qualities of that film. It became lost in digital, and especially early digital cameras, they were pretty sterile looking, if you don't remember. So DxO, the perfectionists, the engineers, the highly technical people that they are, they decided to analyze all of the popular film and make a digital preset type version of it. And if you're thinking presets, everyone has those. I assure you, you have not seen presets like FilmPack, because they look exactly like film. I was bringing JPEGs into the product and then looking at them side by side, and it's just incredible. And not only that, they kind of harken back to your nostalgia with the history of the film, because each film that you select, it gives you a little history, it gives you a sample picture. It's a very cool product.
Not everybody will understand that, but if you're a passionate photographer, then you appreciate that component of history, and you want to be able to recreate the look of film without having to actually develop your own film. In 2012, they launched DxO ViewPoint, which was a tool that allowed you to correct perspective distortion that you might get from a wide-angle lens. So it fixed distortion, corrected the geometry, the morphology of it, and it was pretty groundbreaking at the time. In 2013, we got DxO Prime, which was better raw processing. And now we should back up to 1995 and go to Germany, where a little company is developing apps for processing photos on computers called Nik. And the Nik Collection saw great success. I used it from very early years until Google bought it in 2012. And that seemed great because Google surely will make it better, right? But Google abandoned it.
Yeah, and a lot of fans of Nik were really disappointed because they thought it would go away forever. But then in 2017, DxO swoops in and they saved the Nik Collection. They bought it from Google.
Yeah, this was a motivated sale that only happened because all of us photographers, got mad at Google. And Google's like, I don't want all these angry photographers. Somebody please take this and keep it alive just so they're not mad at us anymore.
It makes sense that DxO would take it because they're very much for photographers by photographers. So not only did they just take it, they could have bought it and just, used it for scraps as is. They actually spent 6 years rewriting the code to make it better, and they've integrated it into their other collections. So in 2024, they released the first fully rewritten Nik Collection.
And I was a software developer for many years, so I know the burden it is to try to take over somebody else's code base. That's an awful, difficult thing to do, but they did it as a service to the community, and today Nik Collection is better than ever. There's a whole suite of software that people should just check out if you're not familiar with it. My single favorite app is the Silver Effects.
Yeah, you would like that. Very silver jacket.
It's by far the best way to process images to black and white. And they give images this kind of chrome look, like a gleam that you don't get from just hitting the B and W button in some other processing app. They make it really beautiful. It's for passionate people, for artists. But I also love the analog effects. It makes things look like film, but you can make it look like a negative, like the image taken from your camera could be made to look like a medium format negative.
In 2020, they released Deep Prime, a deep learning-based tool that was the first innovative way to simultaneously demosaic and denoise images. They found that performing both processes simultaneously produced better results than performing them sequentially.
Yeah,
So,
normally they did it like one after the other.
instead of sequentially, they could combine the two things and just create even better results. Once again, the perfectionism is off the charts.
It continued to evolve, and in 2021 they released PureRAW, which added in lens correction and denoising, and it could be an add-on to Lightroom because it was smarter than Lightroom. So here they're integrating into the workflow and tools that photographers are already using. One thing that PureRAW and PhotoLab do that other apps don't do is smarter sharpening. Like, lenses don't have the same level of detail throughout the field. The center is usually sharpest, and the corners get kind of blurry. But most apps apply sharpening the same across the entire frame. But PureRAW and other DxO tools use their huge library of lens characteristics to apply sharpening where the pictures need it the most, usually at the corners. Earlier I mentioned that Optics Pro eventually became PhotoLab, and PhotoLab is an extremely powerful tool today, and it's kind of where most people should start with the DxO apps. PhotoLab allows you to organize and edit your photos, and it also allows you to open up the other DxO tools that you might need. And the great thing about PhotoLab is there's no monthly fee. There's no invading your privacy. They've won the TIPA Awards 5 years straight. That's the Technical Image Press Association. It's available for a flat rate because these are people who are passionate about photography and images in the photography community. They're not people who are trying to scrape every last dollar out of you like so many of the other companies.
Yeah, they truly care about the final result. So we've taken you through so much about DxO, their origins of saving lives in swimming pools, the DxO One. I still would like to bring this back because I think everyone would like one. But I think we should also talk about the future of DxO, because if there's one thing I know, you can learn so much about the future of someone by learning about their history. And we've clearly learned a lot about that. I think that DxO is a set of people who are highly passionate and skilled, and who want to create the best products to their ability. So what do you think they're going to come out with? What does it look like for them?
Well, I know that they always try to use the technologies and skills that they have and apply it in new ways. And they have an incredibly valuable database of basically every camera and lens combination. And this summer, they're getting a new NVIDIA H100 AI cluster.
They will definitely have some of the best AI, I will call it ethical AI tools, because it won't be taking anyone's data but their own. I'm really wishing them the best and brightest future, because meeting all of them was just so nice to see the passion that each person had. So tell us more about your experiences with DxO. What's your experience with their software? Did you have a DxO One? What do you think?
Yeah, I'd love to hear it. And congratulations on 20 years of passionate photography, DxO.
Yep. Happy anniversary, and we wish you many more great years to come.
Bye.